I walked away from a promising career after my boss crossed the line with my wife. Years later, she called begging for a job. I never expected my wife to betray me with my boss. I worked for a prestigious marketing firm in Chicago, climbing the corporate ladder with impressive speed. Jake Thompson, the company's golden boy and my direct supervisor, had taken me under his wing when I joined 5 years ago. I thought we were friends. Last night changed everything. At the company's annual gala, I watched from across the ballroom as Jake pulled my wife of 7 years, Melissa, into a secluded corner. The way his hand lingered on her lower back made me uneasy, but I tried to dismiss it as friendly affection after a few drinks. Then I saw them slip out onto the terrace together when they thought no one was watching. Something in my gut told me to follow. I wish I hadn't. What I witnessed shattered my world in an instant. My boss and my wife locked in a passionate embrace, her hands running through his hair as he whispered something that made her laugh. When I confronted them, Jake simply smirked while Melissa looked at me with pity in her eyes. "It's been going on for months, David," she said. "We weren't going to tell you until after your promotion next week." I'm writing this from a hotel room at 3 a.m., my resignation email already sent, and my entire life packed into 2 suitcases. I don't know what comes next, but I know I deserve better than this. 5 years earlier. I still remember my first day at Thomson Reeves Marketing like it was yesterday. Fresh out of grad school with a master's in marketing, I was eager to prove myself at one of Chicago's most prestigious firms. The office spanned 3 floors of a gleaming downtown high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. I wore my best suit that day, navy blue with subtle pinstripes, a graduation gift from my parents. "You must be David Chen," a confident voice said behind me as I stood awkwardly in the reception area. I turned to find Jake Thompson himself, the youngest partner in the firm's history at just 35, smiling warmly at me. He had that effortless charisma that successful people often possess, perfect teeth, perfectly tailored suit, and a handshake firm enough to convey authority without trying to crush my hand. "Yes, sir. It's an honor to meet you," I stammered, immediately regretting how eager I sounded. Jake laughed. "Drop the sir, makes me feel like my father. Just Jake is fine. We're excited to have you on board. Your professors at Northwestern had some incredibly flattering things to say about you." He gave me a personal tour of the office, introducing me to key team members and explaining current projects. By lunchtime, I felt like I'd won the career lottery. Not only was I working at a top firm, but the rising star partner had apparently taken a personal interest in my success. That evening, I rushed home to our small apartment in Wicker Park to tell Melissa about my first day. We'd been married for 2 years at that point, high school sweethearts who'd stuck together through college and beyond. She was working as an elementary school teacher, and we were both grinding hard to build the life we dreamed of. "He sounds amazing," Melissa said as she stirred pasta sauce on our tiny stove. "Like the mentor everyone wishes they could have." "He really is," I agreed. "And get this, he's invited the whole team out for drinks on Friday, including spouses. You'll get to meet him." Melissa's eyes lit up. "I'd better find something nice to wear then. First impressions and all that." I remember kissing her on the forehead and feeling so lucky. Great new job, beautiful wife, our whole lives ahead of us. "You'll be the most stunning woman there, no matter what you wear," I told her. If I could go back to that moment, I'd grab myself by the shoulders and warn myself about what was coming. But of course, that's not how life works. Instead, I walked blindly into the next 5 years, not realizing I was setting the stage for my own heartbreak. That Friday was the first time Jake and Melissa met. We arrived at the upscale cocktail bar downtown, and I felt a surge of pride introducing my wife to my colleagues. She looked beautiful in a simple black dress that made her blue eyes pop, her blonde hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders. When Jake approached us, I noticed a subtle change in his demeanor, a flicker of something in his eyes as he took in my wife. "So this is the famous Melissa," he said, holding her hand a moment longer than necessary during their handshake. "David hasn't stopped talking about you." "All good things, I hope," she laughed, and I didn't think anything of the slight blush that rose to her cheeks. "Nothing but glowing reviews," Jake assured her. "Though he failed to mention just how lovely you are." I beamed with pride, interpreting his words as a compliment to my good fortune rather than what they truly were, the first testing of boundaries. Over the next few months, I threw myself into work, determined to prove Jake's faith in me was well placed. I would arrive early and leave late, taking on additional projects and consistently exceeding expectations. Jake continued to mentor me, inviting me to sit in on important client meetings and giving me increasing responsibility. "You've got real potential, David," he told me after I landed my first major client. "Keep this up, and you'll be on the fast track to senior management." What I didn't realize at the time was that while I was working 60-hour weeks, Jake was slowly inserting himself into other parts of my life. It started innocently enough. He'd occasionally text Melissa to coordinate a surprise lunch delivery when I was working late, or he'd send us both invitations to industry events. 6 months into my new job, Jake invited us to a dinner party at his luxurious Lincoln Park home. It was the first time we'd seen where he lived, and I remember Melissa's wide eyes as we took in the professional interior design, expensive artwork, and panoramic city views from his rooftop deck. "This is what hard work gets you," I whispered to her as we sipped champagne. "One day, we'll have a place like this." Jake, overhearing, clapped me on the shoulder. "With your talent and drive, I have no doubt." Throughout that evening, I noticed Jake paying special attention to Melissa, refilling her glass before it was empty, laughing at her jokes, asking thoughtful questions about her teaching career. I felt nothing but gratitude, appreciating how my boss was making my wife feel included. "Your husband is quite the find," I overheard Jake telling Melissa at one point. "We have big plans for him at the firm." On the Uber ride home, Melissa couldn't stop talking about the evening. "Jake is so charming and successful, but not in that arrogant way some men can be. He seems genuinely interested in people." "He's a great boss," I agreed. "I'm lucky to work for him." The next year passed in a blur of career advancement for me. Jake kept his word, giving me increasingly high-profile accounts and including me in strategic discussions usually reserved for senior management. My salary increased dramatically, and Melissa and I were able to move from our small apartment to a modern condo in West Loop. We weren't at Jake's level yet, but we were moving up. On our third anniversary at the firm, Jake invited me to lunch at an exclusive members-only club downtown. "I wanted to discuss your future," he said after we'd ordered. "The executive team has been watching your progress, and we're very impressed. There's a senior management position opening up in the next 6 months, and your name is at the top of the list." I nearly choked on my water. "Senior management? Already? That's incredible, Jake. Thank you." He waved off my gratitude. "You've earned it. But it will mean even more responsibility, longer hours, some travel. Have you discussed this possibility with Melissa?" The question caught me off guard. "Not specifically, but she knows how ambitious I am. She's always been supportive." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "You're fortunate. Not all spouses understand the sacrifices needed for success at this level. Melissa is special." There was something in the way he said it that should have raised red flags, but I was too excited about the career opportunity to notice. "She is," I agreed. "I couldn't do any of this without her support." "You should bring her to the Thompson Foundation Gala next month," Jake suggested. "It's our biggest event of the year, and it would be good for her to meet more of the executive team if you're going to be joining their ranks soon." The Thompson Foundation was Jake's family charity, focused on urban education initiatives. The annual gala was legendary in Chicago business circles, a black tie affair at the Four Seasons that attracted the city's elite. "We'd be honored," I said. When I told Melissa about the potential promotion and the gala invitation, she squealed with excitement and threw her arms around me. "I'm so proud of you," she exclaimed. "You've worked so hard for this." "We've worked hard," I corrected her. "Your support made this possible." Her eyes sparkled. "We need to go shopping. I need a dress worthy of a future senior manager's wife." The day of the gala arrived, and I felt on top of the world. Melissa looked stunning in a floor-length emerald gown that made her look like a movie star. I wore a new tuxedo, feeling both proud and slightly out of place among Chicago's business elite. Jake found us almost immediately upon our arrival, looking impeccable in a custom tuxedo. "The Kins have arrived," he announced, kissing Melissa's cheek in greeting. "Melissa, you look absolutely breathtaking." "Thank you," she replied, that same blush I'd noticed the first time they met returning to her cheeks. "This is quite the event you've put together." "Let me introduce you to some people," Jake offered, placing his hand on the small of Melissa's back in a gesture that seemed perfectly acceptable in the moment. Throughout the evening, Jake expertly guided us through the crowd, introducing me to important contacts and potential clients. I noticed he kept Melissa close, always making sure her champagne glass was full, pulling her into conversations where she could talk about her passion for education. By midnight, when the event was winding down, Melissa was slightly tipsy and more animated than usual, laughing easily at Jake's jokes. "I should get her home," I said to Jake as Melissa excused herself to the ladies' room. "You've got a remarkable woman there, David," Jake said, his expression unreadable. "Don't get so caught up in your career that you forget to appreciate her." "Never," I promised, not realizing the irony of my response. The weeks following the gala were intense at work. Jake had me leading a pitch for our biggest potential client yet, and I was working 14-hour days. Melissa was understanding, bringing me dinner at the office when I couldn't make it home and never complaining about our canceled plans. What I didn't notice, or chose not to notice, were the subtle changes in our relationship. Melissa seemed distracted, constantly checking her phone and smiling at text messages. When I asked who she was texting so frequently, she would say just a colleague or planning committee for the school fundraiser. I also didn't question why Jake would occasionally mention running into Melissa at coffee shops or seeing her at educational events related to his foundation. It seemed natural that their paths would cross, especially given their shared interest in education. "I bumped into your wife at the bookstore yesterday," Jake mentioned casually one afternoon as we reviewed presentation slides. "She has excellent taste in literature." We ended up having coffee and discussing those new teaching methods she's implementing. "That's great," I said, genuinely pleased that my boss and my wife got along so well. "She mentioned she was going book shopping, but didn't tell me she ran into you." Something flickered across Jake's face: satisfaction? Guilt? Before he returned to his usual confident expression. Probably slipped her mind. "Now, about this client presentation. 4 years into my time at Thomson Reeves, I was firmly established as a rising star within the company. Jake had kept his promise, and I was now officially in senior management, with my own office and a team reporting to me. Our financial situation had improved dramatically, and Melissa and I had started discussing buying a house in the suburbs and possibly starting a family. With my new position came more company events and functions. The annual company gala had become a highlight of our social calendar, and this particular year marked the firm's 25th anniversary. The event was bigger and more elaborate than ever before, held at the Chicago Art Institute with black tie attire and a full orchestra. Melissa spent weeks finding the perfect dress, a sapphire blue gown that contrasted beautifully with her blonde hair. I remember watching her get ready that evening, carefully applying her makeup and styling her hair, and thinking how fortunate I was to have her by my side through this journey. "You look incredible," I told her as she fastened diamond earrings, a gift from me to celebrate my promotion, to her ears. "Think Jake will approve?" she asked, then quickly added, "And the other executives, of course." The question struck me as odd, but I dismissed it. "Everyone will be captivated. You'll be the most beautiful woman there." The gala was in full swing when we arrived. Colleagues congratulated me on recent successes, and I proudly introduced Melissa to newer team members who hadn't met her yet. Jake found us during the cocktail hour, looking sharp in his tuxedo and accompanied by his date for the evening, a willowy brunette I didn't recognize. "David. Melissa." He greeted us warmly, kissing Melissa on both cheeks. "Let me introduce you to Claire. She's on the board of the Thompson Foundation." After exchanging pleasantries, Jake suggested we find our table for dinner. I wasn't surprised to find that we were seated at his table, a prime position near the stage where speeches would be given later. Throughout dinner, I was engaged in conversation with Claire and another executive about potential expansion into international markets. I didn't immediately notice how frequently Jake and Melissa were leaning toward each other, speaking in low voices that couldn't be heard over the music and laughter filling the room. When I did glance over, Melissa quickly straightened up, reaching for her wine glass with slightly trembling hands. After dinner came speeches, then dancing. I was pulled into a conversation with the CEO about my recent client acquisition, feeling honored by his interest in my work. Melissa touched my arm lightly. "I'm going to freshen up," she said. "Don't worry about me, keep talking." I nodded gratefully and returned to my conversation. 10 minutes later, I realized Jake had also disappeared from the table. Something uncomfortable stirred in my stomach, but I pushed it away. Jake was probably networking or dealing with event issues. And Melissa was simply taking her time in the restroom or chatting with someone she knew. When another 15 minutes passed with no sign of either of them, I excused myself and went looking. The women's restroom was near the terrace, so I headed in that direction, thinking I might wait outside for Melissa to emerge. As I approached, I heard laughter coming from the terrace, her laughter. I recognized it immediately, the particular musical quality it took on when she was genuinely amused. I slowed my steps, an inexplicable dread creeping over me. Through the glass doors leading to the terrace, I could see them. Jake and Melissa standing close together, his hand resting on her waist in a way that was unmistakably intimate. As I watched, frozen in place, he brushed a strand of hair from her face, letting his fingers linger against her cheek. She leaned into his touch, her eyes closed for a brief moment. I should have walked away, given myself time to process what I was seeing. Instead, I pushed open the terrace door harder than necessary, causing them both to jump apart guiltily. "David," Melissa exclaimed, her voice unnaturally high. "I was just getting some air. Jake came out to make sure I was okay." I looked between them, noting their slightly disheveled appearance, the smudge of lipstick at the corner of Jake's mouth that matched the shade Melissa was wearing. "How long?" I asked, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. "David, let's not do this here," Jake said smoothly, adjusting his tie. "This is a misunderstanding. Let's all go back inside and enjoy the rest of the evening." "How long have you been sleeping with my wife?" I clarified, louder this time. Melissa flinched, but Jake's expression shifted from false concern to something more honest, a mixture of pity and arrogance. "It's been going on for months, David," Melissa finally said, her voice small but steady. "We weren't going to tell you until after your promotion next week." The carefully planned timing of their revelation hit me like a physical blow. They had calculated the perfect moment to destroy my marriage, right after I'd secured the promotion Jake had dangled in front of me for years. "How considerate of you both," I said, the sarcasm barely masking the pain in my voice. "You've been so focused on your career," Jake said, not even bothering to deny the affair anymore. "Melissa needed someone who could give her the attention she deserves. And you selflessly stepped up to fill that role," I replied, anger finally breaking through the shock. "My mentor. My friend." "David, please," Melissa reached for my arm, but I stepped back. "It just happened. We didn't plan this. Things like this don't just happen, Melissa. There are hundreds of choices that lead to this moment." Jake straightened his posture, slipping back into his executive demeanor. "Let's be adults about this. Your career at the firm doesn't have to be affected. We can all behave professionally." I stared at him, suddenly seeing with perfect clarity the manipulation that had been happening for years. Jake hadn't mentored me out of genuine interest in my talents, he'd used my ambition to get close to my wife, to insert himself into our lives. I laughed, a bitter sound that seemed to startle them both. "You really believe I'd continue working for you? That I'd take that promotion now, knowing it came with the side benefit of you sleeping with my wife?" "David, be reasonable," Jake's tone hardened. "Don't throw away everything you've worked for over emotions. This doesn't have to affect your professional life." Without another word, I turned and walked back into the gala. I moved through the crowd on autopilot, nodding at colleagues who had no idea my world had just imploded. I found our table, picked up Melissa's wrap and purse, and returned to the terrace where they were still standing, now arguing in hushed tones. I handed Melissa her things. "I'm leaving. Do whatever you want." "David, wait," she called after me, panic in her voice. "Let me explain." But I was already walking away, pulling out my phone to call a ride. Behind me, I could hear Jake saying something to Melissa, probably assuring her that I would calm down eventually, that this would all blow over. They were wrong. I returned to our condo, packed a suitcase with essential items, and booked a hotel room downtown. Sitting on the edge of the hotel bed at 3 a.m., I drafted a resignation email to HR, with copies to the CEO and board of directors. I kept it professional, stating simply that I could no longer work for the company due to personal ethical conflicts with senior leadership. I didn't mention the affair explicitly, I had enough pride left to avoid appearing like a scorned husband. Then I turned off my phone and tried to sleep, knowing that tomorrow I would begin dismantling the life I had spent 5 years building. The aftermath. When I finally turned my phone back on the next afternoon, I had dozens of missed calls and messages. Most were from Melissa, ranging from apologetic to defensive to desperate. There were several from Jake, his tone shifting from conciliatory to mildly threatening, suggesting we discuss the situation like gentlemen before making permanent decisions. There were also messages from HR acknowledging my resignation and requesting an exit interview, and a surprising one from the CEO asking me to reconsider and meet with him personally before finalizing my decision. I replied only to the CEO, agreeing to meet him for coffee the following day. I ignored everyone else. Melissa had left me a voicemail saying she was staying with a friend and would give me space, but we needed to talk about what happens next. The idea that there would be a next for us seemed absurd to me. The meeting with the CEO, Richard Reeves, was unexpected in many ways. I'd always found him intimidating, a self-made man in his 60s with a reputation for brutal honesty. We met at a quiet cafe several blocks from the office. "I won't insult you by pretending I don't know what happened," he said after we'd ordered our coffee. "The walls have eyes and ears, and something like this doesn't stay quiet for long." I nodded, unsure what to say. "Jake Thompson is a talented marketer and has brought considerable business to the firm," he continued. "He's also my nephew and has been given certain allowances because of it." This was news to me. I'd known Jake came from a wealthy family, but not that he was related to one of the founders. This isn't the first time his personal conduct has created problems, Richard admitted, looking uncomfortable. But it is the first time we stand to lose someone of your caliber because of it. I appreciate that, I said carefully, but I can't continue working there. Surely you understand why. Richard nodded slowly. I do. And I respect your decision. What I want to offer you is something different. I have connections throughout the industry. Let me help you land somewhere worthy of your talents, a competitor, perhaps. Consider it my apology for my nephew's behavior. I was stunned by the offer. Why would you do that? Helping me move to a competitor doesn't benefit you. The older man smiled sadly. I built this company on relationships and integrity, David. Jake represents a new generation that sometimes forgets those principles. I can't undo what happened, but I can ensure a good man's career doesn't become collateral damage. I accepted his offer, and true to his word, Richard made some calls. Within 2 weeks, I had interviews at 3 competing agencies. The day after my last interview, divorce papers were delivered to my hotel. Melissa was filing on grounds of irreconcilable differences. She wasn't asking for much financially, which only confirmed my suspicion that Jake was supporting her now. I signed the papers without contesting anything. I wanted a clean break, from the marriage, from Thompson Reeves, from Chicago itself. When the most promising job offer came through, it was from a boutique agency in Denver specializing in outdoor and adventure brands. The position was a lateral move in terms of title, but the opportunity felt right. I needed mountains, fresh air, and distance from the skyscrapers that now felt like they were closing in on me. I accepted the offer, sold the condo, giving Melissa her fair share despite her protests that she didn't want anything, and relocated to Colorado within a month. The divorce was finalized remarkably quickly, as neither of us contested any terms. Before leaving Chicago, I had one more meeting with Richard Reeves. Over lunch, he handed me an envelope. References, he explained. And my personal phone number. Your talents will be wasted at that small shop in Denver, but I understand why you need the change. When you're ready for something bigger again, call me. No strings, no Thompson involvement. I thanked him sincerely. Despite everything, I was leaving with at least one valuable relationship intact. New beginnings. Denver was exactly what I needed. The agency was small but growing, with clients in outdoor recreation, sustainable products, and conservation. It was worlds away from the corporate financial clients I'd handled in Chicago. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely excited about the work itself rather than just my career trajectory. I rented a modern apartment near downtown with mountain views and bought a used Jeep. On weekends, I hiked, camped, and taught myself to rock climb and mountain bike. The physical challenges helped channel my anger and betrayal into something productive. In those early months, I ignored messages from both Melissa and Jake. Melissa eventually stopped trying to contact me directly and instead sent occasional emails with practical matters related to the divorce and our former shared finances. Jake sent a few messages that ranged from pseudo-apologetic to subtly threatening, suggesting I was burning bridges in the industry. I deleted them all without responding. About 6 months into my new life, I received a LinkedIn request from someone named Lauren Dixon, a marketing director at one of Colorado's largest outdoor equipment manufacturers. She wanted to discuss potential collaboration. We met for coffee, and what was supposed to be a quick professional meeting turned into a 3-hour conversation about marketing philosophy, outdoor adventures, and eventually, what had brought each of us to Colorado. Lauren had moved from Seattle 2 years earlier after ending a long-term relationship with her college sweetheart. He couldn't understand why I wasn't content just being his girlfriend while he pursued his dreams, she explained. The idea that I might have ambitions of my own seemed to confuse him. I found myself sharing more than I'd intended about my own situation. My ex-wife and my former boss are together now, I admitted. I found out in about the most humiliating way possible. Lauren didn't offer the usual platitudes about things working out for the best. Instead, she nodded thoughtfully and said, "Some betrayals change who you are. The trick is making sure they change you into someone better, not bitter." That coffee meeting turned into a client relationship for the agency, and a friendship for me. Lauren and I began hiking together on weekends, strictly as friends at first. She was smart, funny, and refreshingly direct. Unlike Melissa, who had always been somewhat deferential to my career ambitions, Lauren challenged my ideas and pushed me to think differently. A year into my Colorado life, the agency made me a partner. The business was growing rapidly, largely due to the outdoor industry clients I brought in, including Lauren's company. We developed a reputation for authentic, innovative campaigns that resonated with outdoor enthusiasts. Lauren and I were celebrating my partnership news over dinner when she looked at me thoughtfully and said, "You know, at some point we should acknowledge that these aren't just friend dinners anymore." I laughed, relieved that she had been the one to say it. "I wasn't sure if you were interested in something more." "I've been interested since that first coffee," she admitted. "But you needed time, and I respected that. How about now? Has enough time passed?" I reached across the table and took her hand. "More than enough." 3 years later. Life in Denver had exceeded all my expectations. The agency had tripled in size, opening a second office in Boulder. Lauren and I had moved in together, buying a house in the foothills with spectacular views and a dedicated home office for each of us. We weren't married, but we discussed it and agreed it was likely in our future. I rarely thought about my previous life in Chicago anymore. Occasionally something would trigger a memory, a certain cologne, a familiar restaurant chain, the skyline in a movie, but the sharp pain had faded to a dull acknowledgement. I hadn't heard from Melissa in over a year, not since she'd emailed to let me know she was getting remarried and wanted to make sure there were no loose ends between us. I wished her well and meant it. Jake, however, had made occasional attempts to reconnect professionally, sending emails about potential collaboration opportunities or industry events where we might accidentally run into each other. I ignored them all. One Wednesday morning, I was in the middle of a creative meeting when my assistant interrupted to say I had an urgent call from Chicago. Thinking it might be Richard Reeves, I excused myself to take it. "David Chen," I answered, stepping into my office. "David, it's Jake Thompson." His voice sounded different, tighter, less confident. I nearly hung up, but curiosity kept me on the line. "What do you want, Jake?" "I need to talk to you about a potential opportunity," he said, attempting to sound casual but not quite pulling it off. "I've been following your agency's work. Very impressive growth." "Thanks," I replied coldly. "If this is a business call, you should email our general inquiries address. I don't handle initial contacts anymore." "This isn't exactly a standard business matter," Jake said, his voice dropping. "Look, things at Thompson Reeves have changed. Richard retired last year, and I've taken over as CEO." This didn't surprise me. Jake had always been the heir apparent, family connection or not. "Congratulations," I said flatly. "What does this have to do with me?" There was a pause before Jake continued, sounding uncharacteristically hesitant. "We've lost some key clients over the past 18 months. The financial service sector is transforming, and we haven't adapted quickly enough. I need someone with fresh perspectives who understands both traditional corporate clients and emerging markets." I laughed in disbelief. "Are you offering me a job, Jake? Seriously?" "I'm offering you a partnership," he clarified. "Executive level, profit sharing, significant creative control. We need what you've built in Denver, but on a larger scale." "You must be truly desperate to call me of all people," I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "What happened to all those bridges I was supposedly burning?" Another pause. "Things change. People change. I've had to make some difficult decisions lately, professionally and personally." "Meaning what, exactly?" Jake sighed audibly. "Melissa and I separated 8 months ago. The divorce was finalized last week." That was unexpected. Last I'd heard, they were getting married. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, surprised to find I genuinely meant it. Despite everything, I didn't wish them unhappiness. "It was for the best," Jake said quickly. "We wanted different things. But that's not why I'm calling. This offer is strictly business. The firm needs what you can bring to the table." "Jake," I said, suddenly tired of the conversation, even if I believed this was a genuine offer rather than some strange attempt at. "I don't know what. I'm not interested. I've built something here that matters to me. I have a partner I love and trust. I'm not giving that up to return to Chicago and work with you." "At least let me email you the details," he pressed. "The compensation package alone is worth considering. And you wouldn't have to relocate immediately. We could work something out with the Denver office as a satellite operation." "No," I said firmly. "I wish you luck finding someone else. Goodbye, Jake." I hung up before he could respond and sat at my desk for a moment, processing the unexpected call. Part of me was amazed at his audacity, but another part recognized the desperation behind it. Jake Thompson wasn't used to failing or to being told no. When I returned to the creative meeting, Lauren gave me a questioning look. I shook my head slightly to indicate I'd tell her later and refocused on the task at hand, a campaign for a sustainable outdoor clothing brand that aligned perfectly with our agency's values. That evening over dinner, I told Lauren about Jake's call. "Wow," she said, refilling our wine glasses. That's either the most arrogant move ever or a strangely human one. Maybe both. How do you figure? She considered for a moment. Well, it's arrogant to assume you'd even consider working with him again after what happened. But it's also surprisingly vulnerable to essentially admit he needs your help to save his family business. From what you've told me about him, that couldn't have been easy for his ego. I hadn't thought about it that way. I suppose you're right. Still, there's no world in which I would take that offer. Lauren smiled. I know. That's one of the things I love about you, your integrity isn't for sale, even at executive partnership prices. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I learned the hard way what matters. I'm not making that mistake again. 2 days later, an email arrived from Jake with the subject line formal offer, please consider. I moved it to a folder without opening it, intending to send a formal rejection later. Before I could get around to it, I received another unexpected call, this time from Richard Reeves. I heard Jake reached out to you, he said after we'd exchanged pleasantries. News travels fast, I replied. I still keep tabs on the business, even in retirement, Richard explained. David, I'm not calling to pressure you either way, but I wanted you to have the full picture. The situation at Thompson Reeves is more dire than Jake probably admitted. 3 of the 5 largest clients have moved their accounts elsewhere in the past year. The firm is at a crossroads. I'm sorry to hear that, I said sincerely. But I don't see how I can help. I don't have connections to major financial clients anymore. My network is in outdoor and sustainable brands now. That's precisely why Jake wants you, Richard said. The firm needs to diversify beyond financial services. They need someone who understands different markets, different values. Your work in Colorado has been remarkable, building an agency that stands for something beyond just profits. I was surprised by his familiarity with my current work. You've been following my career? Richard chuckled. I told you I would. I recognize talent, David, and I hate to see it wasted. That said, I understand if you refuse. Jake made his choices, and this may be the natural consequence. After hanging up, I finally opened Jake's email. The offer was even more generous than he'd indicated on the phone, executive partnership with significant equity, a salary that doubled my current one, and a commitment to open a Denver office that I would lead with minimal oversight from Chicago. It was tempting from a purely business perspective. The resources of Thompson Reeves combined with the creative direction my agency had pioneered could create something truly special. But the personal cost seemed impossible to overcome. I discussed it thoroughly with Lauren that evening. What do you think I should do? I asked after explaining the details. She considered carefully before responding. I think you need to make this decision based on what you want for your future, not what happened in your past. If you turn it down because the opportunity doesn't excite you or align with your values, that's valid. If you turn it down only because of history with Jake, you might regret it later. Working with him again seems impossible, I admitted. Then don't do it, she said simply. You've built something beautiful here. There's no shame in choosing happiness and peace over money and complications. I slept on it, but by morning, my decision was clear. I composed a respectful but firm email to Jake. Jake. Thank you for the offer and for Richard's follow-up call. I appreciate the vote of confidence in my abilities and the generous terms. After careful consideration, I must decline. The agency I've built in Denver represents not just a business but a philosophy about what marketing can and should be. I'm proud of our work and the direction we're heading. I sincerely wish you success in navigating the challenges at Thompson Reeves. Perhaps this is an opportunity to reimagine what the firm could become. Regards. David Chen. I expected that to be the end of it, but a week later, I received yet another call from an unknown Chicago number. This time, it wasn't Jake or Richard. David? It's Melissa. I nearly dropped the phone in surprise. Melissa. This is unexpected. I know, she said quickly. And I know I have no right to call you after everything. But I heard about Jake's offer, and I wanted to talk to you before you made a final decision. I've already declined, I told her, keeping my voice neutral. Oh. She sounded genuinely disappointed. That's probably for the best. But I still think we should talk. I'm not sure what we have to talk about after all this time. Closure, maybe, she suggested. Or context. I know how things looked that night at the gala, and I'm not trying to excuse what happened. But there were things you didn't know about my relationship with Jake, about our marriage. Melissa, I interrupted gently, it's been 3 years. I've moved on. I'm happy now, genuinely happy. Whatever context or closure you're looking for, I don't need it anymore. There was silence on the line before she spoke again, her voice smaller. I'm glad you're happy. You deserve that. The truth is, I'm the one who needs the closure. My marriage to Jake was a disaster from the start. He was never the man I thought he was, never the man you are. I felt a strange mixture of emotions, sympathy for her evident pain, vindication that the relationship born from betrayal hadn't brought happiness, and finally, a profound sense of relief that I had escaped that life. I hope you find what you're looking for, I told her sincerely. But I can't be part of that journey. I understand, she replied. There's one more thing you should know, though. The firm is in worse shape than Jake is admitting. They're considering layoffs, possibly even selling to a larger agency. Your declining the partnership has accelerated their timeline for drastic measures. Why are you telling me this? Because despite everything, I know you care about the people there. Most of them had nothing to do with what happened between us. If you have any connections or opportunities that might help some of them land on their feet, it would be a kindness they don't even know they need yet. After hanging up, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about the people I'd worked with at Thomson Reeves. Many had been friends, mentors, or protégés. They didn't deserve to have their livelihoods threatened because of leadership failures. That evening, I made a decision that surprised even me. I called Richard Reeves. I can't accept Jake's offer, I explained, but I might have an alternative proposal. My agency has been considering expansion, possibly through acquisition. What would Jake say to selling the Thomson Reeves Denver division to us? We could retain the staff and transition the compatible clients. It wouldn't save the whole company, but it might provide a softer landing for some good people. Richard was silent for a moment before responding. That's not what I expected you to suggest. It's potentially brilliant, though. Jake would resist at first, his pride would make it difficult to sell to you of all people. But if the alternative is complete failure? Think about it, I suggested. Have Jake call me if he's interested in exploring the idea. No pressure, no games. Just a potential business solution that could benefit everyone. 3 days later, Jake called. His tone was different this time, less arrogant, more businesslike. Richard explained your proposal, he said without preamble. I'd like to discuss it further. I'm open to that, I replied. But I need to be clear about something first. This would be a business transaction, not a reconciliation. I have no interest in rebuilding our personal relationship. Understood, Jake said quickly. This is about salvaging what can be salvaged from a difficult situation. Nothing more. We arranged for him to fly to Denver the following week to meet with me and my business partners. When we met in our conference room, I was struck by how Jake had aged in the 3 years since I'd seen him. The confident, golden boy executive had been replaced by a more somber, slightly haggard version of himself. The negotiations were surprisingly straightforward. Jake had come prepared with financial data, client information, and employee profiles. My team conducted due diligence, and within a month, we had a framework for acquiring Thomson Reeves Denver operations, including their small existing office and approximately 20 staff members. During our final meeting to sign the preliminary agreement, Jake asked if we could speak privately for a moment. My partners left the room, giving us space. I never apologized to you properly, Jake said once we were alone. Not for any of it. At the time, I convinced myself that what Melissa and I did was somehow justified, that you were too focused on your career, that she needed someone who appreciated her more. It was all self-serving bullshit. I nodded, unsure how to respond to this unexpected admission. The truth is, he continued, I was jealous of you. You had natural talent that I had to work twice as hard to match. Clients liked you instinctively. The board saw you as the future of the company. Taking Melissa from you was. It was about power, not love. I figured that out eventually, I said quietly. For what it's worth, which I know isn't much, I'm sorry. The last 3 years have been a masterclass in karma. I lost the relationship, I'm losing the company, and most importantly, I lost my integrity. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I recognize the damage I caused. I studied him for a moment, seeing for the first time the human beneath the ambition. Thank you for saying that. It doesn't change the past, but it helps put it to rest. After he left, Lauren found me staring out the window of my office, processing the conversation. Are you okay? She asked, wrapping her arms around me from behind. I turned to face her. Better than okay, actually. I feel like a chapter that's been partially open for years has finally closed completely. She smiled. Ready to write the next one? 6 months later. The acquisition of Thomson Reeves Denver division had been completed successfully. We'd retained 15 of their 20 employees and about 60% of their clients. The rest had chosen to stay with the Chicago office or move on entirely. Jake had ultimately decided to sell the remainder of the company to a larger international agency, staying on as a regional director, a significant step down from CEO, but a position that allowed him to save face in the industry. Melissa had reached out once more, sending a simple email thanking me for helping preserve jobs at the Denver office, including a friend of hers who worked there. She mentioned she had moved back to our hometown in Michigan to teach elementary school again, returning to the career she'd loved before it all went sideways. I wished her well and meant it. Lauren and I had just returned from a 2-week hiking trip in Patagonia, where I had proposed at sunrise on a mountain overlooking a glacier. She'd said yes immediately, laughing, crying, and pulling a ring box from her own pocket. She'd been planning to propose the next day. As I sat in my office reviewing the quarterly reports for our expanded agency, now the third largest independent marketing firm in Colorado, my phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. Jake had updated his profile to reflect the sale of Thompson Reeves. Out of curiosity, I clicked through to see the full update. In the comments section beneath his announcement, Richard Reeves had written something that made me pause. Every ending creates space for new beginnings. The Thompson Reeves legacy lives on not just through corporate transitions, but through the people whose careers and lives it touched. Some of our greatest success stories are now leading their own ventures, proving that influence extends beyond ownership. Proud of all you've accomplished and all that's yet to come, David. He'd tagged me directly in the comment, making a public statement about my connection to the Thompson Reeves story. Rather than feeling angry about being pulled back into that narrative, I felt strangely at peace. My journey had come full circle, from ambitious new hire to betrayed husband to successful agency partner. I had lost much along the way, but gained more: perspective, resilience, Lauren, and a life built on authentic choices rather than others' expectations. I replied simply to Richard's comment, "Thank you for seeing potential where others might have seen only problems. Some bridges aren't meant to be burned after all, just crossed on the way to somewhere better." That evening, as Lauren and I discussed wedding plans over dinner on our deck, watching the sunset paint the mountains in brilliant orange and purple, I felt a profound gratitude for the painful journey that had led me here. Had Jake and Melissa not betrayed me that night at the gala, I might still be in Chicago, climbing a corporate ladder that led nowhere meaningful, married to someone who didn't truly value me. "What are you thinking about?" Lauren asked, noticing my contemplative expression. "Just how strange life is," I replied. "Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes." She raised her glass in a toast. "To unexpected journeys." I clinked my glass against hers. "And to knowing your own worth." As the last light faded from the sky, I realized I had finally found what I'd been working toward all along, not just success or status, but a life of integrity, surrounded by people I could trust, doing work that mattered. In the end, walking away from that toxic situation had been the best decision I ever made.